Next is the distribution. How do we divvy up the money amongst the 83 counties and the 533 cities and villages? I'm going to talk about the county side. Not that I don't care about the city guys, but not my gig. I'd like to break it down and look in your packets. You should have this sheet, this single sheet with some yellow highlighting. This is the flow chart that the House Fiscal Agency for the legislature has created that describes one part of the Michigan Transportation Fund and how the money is distributed. And I like to put it into three categories. There's some up here. The three categories that we're talking about, the $3.3 billion that's deposited into the MTF, the first part is the 2% constitutional. In the Michigan Constitution, it requires that all 2% of all gasoline taxes collected goes into the Michigan Recreation Improvement Fund. Then we have the second category, which is off the top deductions. These are carve-outs for very specific programs for very specific things, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then last, we have the external formula, the 39-39-22, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, that's how MDOT gets 39, counties get 39, and cities and villages get 22% of the remaining balance after those two categories are dealt with. To my friends in the recreational area with ORVs and snowmobiles, I know you guys feel like you are putting money into the system by buying fuel, and you should have a right to access our roads and right-of-way, but that is not the case because of this simple fact right here. That 2% goes into the recreation fund, and it's divvied up, and don't yell at me about the percents. This was put into law a long time ago. 80% goes to the marina account, 14% goes into the snowmobile account, and then 6% is divided up between the ORV account and the administrative responsibilities for handling that recreation improvement fund. So as you can see, they're getting their money back. So we feel a little slighted that we're not collecting from them because sometimes they are doing just as much damage as any vehicle out there when they're jumping in and out of ditches or doing donuts in the middle of our gravel roads, et cetera, et cetera. I'm all for having a good time, but at the same time, if you're going to use it, you should have to pay for it, for that privilege. You pay for it on a daily basis when you buy fuel. They need to start paying for it. I don't know if we'll ever be able to convince anyone to give that 2% back, but who knows?
What about the 10% federal share for trails?
Federal money can only be spent on federal aid eligible roads. Most of our roads where ORVers are going are not federal aid roads. Those are your gravel roads, your local roads, which are low traffic volume roads. That's where they want to go. Sometimes, for sure, they're running to the gas station or going to the party store to pick up milk and cookies for the kids, I'm sure. But you know that's where they tend to hang out. All right, this is my staff having a funny with me in the picture. Off the top. That's a phrase that I kind of coined back when I started working. I think it was actually out there even before I started 20 years ago at CRA. These are major deductions that are taken off the top of the MTF in order to take care of some business, like MDOT administration, statutory grants, grants to other departments who collect our revenues, the Comprehensive Transportation Fund, that's the transit folks. And then you've got the Transportation Economic Development Fund. That's another big catch that was phrased and coined back in prior to the Engler administration, if I'm not mistaken. And all of those combined, and I'll go through them a little bit further, add up to about $500 million comes off the top of that $3.3 billion. Go ahead, Brian.
You got it.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's the funny. I love our staff. Next slide here, we're talking about the MDOT administration. Why are we giving MDOT $34 million? Well, the federal aid program. They not only review our engineering plans, they do the bid lettings, they do the finances, contract services, they do planning, and let's not forget planning. That requires a lot of their staff time, so we reimburse them for that time and that effort. We have not had a forensic or an auditing of that account for a long, long time, and I'm hoping we can restart that to make sure that all of those specific divisions are doing what they're saying they're doing, and we're paying them the right amounts, and not excessively.
Is that a percentage?
No, that's just kind of a rolling dollar amount from year to year, and it's always increased a little bit at a time. There was a couple of major jumps about 4 years ago that jumped in the amount of money that we were transferring to them, but it varies. It never goes down, I can say that. It's never gone down. We think it should, because they're buying our federal aid, so we feel that some of that should be coming down.
Would it be in a contract if they're taking 20% off the top or something like that most grants have? Seemed to me that that'd be a contract just so they know what everyone's responsibilities are in terms of a budget.
Yeah, I like what you're thinking and what you're saying, but I have not been able to find where that is stated in the Michigan Transportation Fund that they can take that money off the top. I think logic tells you that if you're providing a service for someone, you should be repaid for it. But we need a formal agreement in order to do that. I agree. Back there, Representative.
Hi, so who's in charge of asking for that audit?
That would be the legislature to go through the Auditor General and say, where is your documentation for that $34 million? Can you show me where you spent that money? And to report back to the local road agencies, because they're taking it away from us in transit.
So how long has it been since you've seen anything?
It's been, I started there and it ended, so it's been about 15, 16 years.
Do we need to write our legislators?
Yes. And say, hold a public meeting with your locals, your recipients, your partners, and explain how you're using that money, how you're spending that money.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support. The Comprehensive Transportation Fund, as I said earlier, that is the transit portion of the Michigan Transportation Fund, which is allowed to get up to 10%. That's how the legislation reads. They've been pretty much hitting that 10% mark for the last 5 or 6 years, as far as I can remember. So they're getting their money. If you go back to this single sheet, you'll see that yellow box, and it points back up to the CTF. They're getting an extra $96 million every year, about averaging. That is for auto-related sales tax. Anything that's auto-related and has a sales tax on it goes into that fund for those transit, for the transit people. We have a transit agency in every county, whether it's a dial-a-ride, line haul, or senior citizen, senior handicapper service. Everybody's got something in their county. So this is the money that they use in order to maintain, buy new buses and pay their salaries to all their employees. Again, off the top, part 2. If you go to stay on that left side of that single page that I was talking about, you'll see statutory grants. Those statutory grants are local bridges. This is a real important part of what we do, and a very costly part of what we do. I mean, we can talk about roads until I'm blue in the face, but when you come to a bridge, do you really have the money to replace that bridge, or to put a new deck on that bridge, or to do some major maintenance to that bridge? These are costly little items. The other hidden little secret is culverts. We have thousands and thousands of culverts underneath our roads. They're at an age where they're starting to fall apart, and we need to start replacing them. And guess what? Eagle says you can't replace same size. You got to go bigger or go home, because that's how Eagle rolls. We have to get Eagle approval on any project. If it has a culvert or if it has a bridge, they have to sign off on it that it's good to go, and they will require us to do any specific improvements, like a bigger culvert, bank full, as a concept for replacing the bridges. So it's never a cheap deal, but when we get a bridge, or excuse me, when we have a culvert that's almost 20 feet, and Eagle says go bigger, now it's a bridge. Culverts are culverts up to 20 feet. That's the hidden little secret. When we do a project and they say, gotta go bigger, that means a bridge, that could cancel the whole project. Brian?
You're looking at $1 million for a 30-foot bridge.
That's a pricey little item to have on your road project without, having the money already accounted for or identified. That's a scary little thought, I gotta tell you. All right, if you go to the right-hand side, you'll see some more statutory grants, and there's a bundle in there. And they're all worthy causes that the legislature over time has come up and identified and said, we need to make some improvements. We need to include this in our funding program, and everybody's gonna pay for it. Right now, these off the tops, we're all paying for them. The cities, MDOT, transit, that we're all paying a little bit out of skin out of our nose in order to make sure that these programs go forward. And some of them are, the railroad grade crossing. The railroad industry insists that the approaches are ours, and we need to make sure that our approaches are taken care of to the railroad tracks. Remember, the railroad company may own 60 foot of right of way, but they're only responsible for 1 foot outside the rails. That's what they're responsible for maintaining. The rest of it belongs to the road jurisdiction to take care of. Those approaches to that 12-inch line, that's ours. So they need grants, they need help, and so we help them with that. MDOT has debt, believe it or not. Again, they sell bonds and they have to repay those bonds. Governor Engler back in the 90s agreed to bond for some road projects to the tune of about $3 billion. Well, part of the deal was that if the legislature allows the department to bond, he would allow some of this money to go back, to the locals, to the tune of $33 million. That's also in there in the statutory grant. That $33 million was cost savings from moving the collection point from the pump to the wholesaler. So now the Treasury Department only has to collect from maybe 60 wholesalers versus thousands of gas stations, where he felt there was a lot of fraud going on, and that was kind of the deal for that. So we agreed that he could take $30 million from the MTF and put it towards their debt service. It's a small amount compared to how much they're paying annually, or the department is paying annually. They're probably getting close to $200 million every year that they're paying in debt service. But 30 million of it, well, now it's 50 million of it will be come off the top of the MTF to help the department with their debt. We got the Michigan Wetland Bank. If you know anything about Eagle, we have to mitigate. Even if we touch our own ditches, we have to mitigate. In other words, we have to replace it 2 to 1. It's simple, impact is 2 to 1. 2 acres to 1 acre, 1/10 of an acre, 2/10 of an acre, etc. That's what we have to do, even in our own right of way. If we build a new road, or if we're improving a road and it's next to a wetland, and we touch that wetland, or we have a negative impact to that wetland, we have to mitigate. What we said is we can't afford to mitigate. We can't afford to buy MDOT's wetland. We can't afford to buy private wetland. So what are we going to do? So basically what we did is create this account that would put up to $8 million aside for any road agency to get those credits to mitigate on any project, and it happens overnight. We could do that. Eagle approved it. Eagle thought it was a great idea, concept. So that's what we went with, and that's how that program got developed. And we're really excited and proud of that one. Again, there's TEDF. They get $53 million, and then you got the gas tax. That's a carve out under the Engler administration. When he passed his 4-cent gas tax back in the 90s, he felt uncomfortable giving any more money to the transit folks. So basically what he did, he took that 3 cents out of his 4-cent package and pulled it out. And you'll see later on, it comes back into the 3 road agencies after they pulled it out. And he also used a penny for bridges. Initially started, the penny was for all MDOT bridges. And after about 3 years, he decided that it'd be better to split it with the county or the local agencies in our bridge program. So that's how we're getting some extra bridge money from that half a penny, and MDOT gets the half a penny. So we're all happy campers. TEDF, off the top, here we go. The Transportation Economic Development Fund was created to be a job retainer and a job creator program. This was done back in the 1980s, maybe 70s. This had all good intentions, and it still does have good intentions. But it's a wide program, and you've got A, B, C, D, E, F. We went right through the alphabet here. What the law says, and what the law says about the local bridge program, first priority is debt service. MDOT bonded to kickstart this program. They also bonded to kickstart the local bridge program. So we're still carrying that debt, and we're still paying for it some 30, 40 years later. And it's an embarrassment as far as I'm concerned that we're still paying for it, but that's the way it goes, and that's what the law reads, that debt service is first, and then we do E and F. E as the forest roads, and then we have the urban areas and rural counties. Those two programs get a lump sum. I think it's $5 million if I'm not mistaken. And then we go to category A. This is a targeted industry program, which is a competitive program, which anyone can file or apply to through their road agency or through MDOT. And they will look at and they will rate the applications, and they may award someone who wants to put a new facility in a place where the infrastructure can't handle it. So they will help that infrastructure, that industry, build that corridor or help them improve those roads and intersections in order to make sure that that manufacturer has good access in and out of their place and help the community develop jobs. That's what category A is. Category B, this was restarted about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. This is small cities and villages, but they get a portion of that category A money. I'm not sure exactly what that is or how much it is, and actually I think that's supposed to sunset, so that may go away in the near future, and then category A gets to keep all that money. C, that's urban congestion and mitigation. They've got a lot of congestion areas that they need to address, and if they can show, if they can improve those congested areas, that reduces their air pollution status within the federal government, which is a good thing. D is a secondary all-season road program. That program was intended to build more federal aid roads at the local level in the counties and in the counties. We thought that that was a little bit too constrictive for our use because we were getting such small amounts of federal aid that we really couldn't, we would have to save up all of our federal aid and all of that D money in order to do a project over years. And we just said, forget it, let's just make it a grant program. Can we just, give it to the counties that are entitled to that money? And the department finally agreed to that, and that's what we're doing now. It's more of a direct grant program. Whatever you were allocated, you get. You just have to apply for it. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That secondary all-seasonal road, that's given to the counties. Is there any detail of how that money is supposed to be used for the upkeep of secondary roads?
Technically,
Seasonal roads?
the only criteria that I can think of off the top of my head is that they have to spend that money on a federal aid eligible road. That was the whole point. We get the money, we get to spend it on a federal aid eligible road. That's not a federal aid project. That's my understanding. Am I right, Brian?
It has to be spent on an all-season road, so.
Right.
All-season.
Well, all-season roads are generally our primary roads, which are federal aid eligible.
But on the on-seasonal roads, if they're getting money for that, isn't there something that says that they have to do some maintenance to that road?
The Act 51 has requirements for primary roads and local roads and how much money we're supposed to be spending on maintenance, yes.
As far as the all-season, that means it's built to a higher standard, so the trucks can travel over
Right.
some damages. So it's got a thicker asphalt, it's got thicker gravel.
No, to me, an all-seasonal road is one that's only maintained during the summer.
No, that-
All-season means it's built really thick.
Seasonal roads are what you're talking about.
Seasonal, this is
Yeah,
all-season.
this all-season can handle a truck weight, right? There's no weight restrictions, or depending on your truck configuration, you can drive a legal load on the all-season roads. When they're seasonal or restricted, that means that you have to reduce your weight by 25 or 35% to be on that road.
Have you been tracking the amount of allocations in each of those classes over time to see which is getting more? Like I'm thinking about congestion mitigation. Have you seen that decrease over time or remain flat?
I have not seen anything. I haven't talked to a planner or at the state level or at the local level that can answer that question. I have not. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you. The young lady?
This has to do with urban congestion.
Mm-hmm.
So in our county, for the first time, we had a Chick-fil-A open up last week. And the congestion with the traffic is horrible. Can we apply for this urban congestion relief or something like that?
Is that in the SEMCOG area?
No.
What
It's
area?
Genesee County.
Genesee? Yeah? Go to the meeting and say, hey, we've got an area that we want you to focus on with that congestion mitigation money, so please. let's put some money toward that area, and let's fix that traffic problem. Yeah, and believe me, everybody, I encourage you to go to transportation planning events. They spend a whole lot of time and money looking at multiple jurisdictions and what their plans are for their federal aid. And in some cases, they actually do what's called a round robin. They will give one county all of their federal aid for that region, and you spend the money on your project. Next year you get a project, next year you get a project, and they just keep going around and around. And in some other cases, in some rural task forces, they say, no, just give me my federal aid, I'll figure out what I'm gonna do with it. And everybody's a man on their own. So there's different ways to do that. And again, the selling of your federal aid is another option to help you do what it is you need to do. We know for a fact that if we don't do a federal aid project and you or the road agency does the project themselves, they can save up to 15 to 20%. So that's a major savings when it comes to building and maintaining roads. Last but not least is the formula that I talked about earlier, the 39-39-22, which most of you are probably very familiar with. That's where MDOT gets their 39, 1.3 billion, counties get about 1.2, and the cities and their 22% get $696 million to divide between 533 cities and villages. Now, it may sound unfair, but if you think about it, the department has a higher standard of road, obviously, which requires more money. Is that too much? That's a big question. That's a question that needs to be asked on a regular basis. But I know that the counties have 97,000 miles of road. That's almost 75% of Michigan's road miles. And the cities have like 20% and MDOT has 10%. So we are carrying the load here as far as how many miles of road that we have to maintain and continue to improve. So if there was an opportunity, we would sure like to see that, but we don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. We feel that a rising tide lifts all boats, and if we just put some more money into the system, everybody will get more money and hopefully enough money to keep their infrastructure in safe and good condition. That's our goal.